Information that he was injured.
All right, thanks.
Could you clarify how he was detained? If he was not shot, could you clarify how he was detained?
Sure. So law enforcement, in right here in this very area, they actually tackled him to the ground and handcuffed him.
Did you know his name in the hospital? Did you miss his name?
But he had a bulletproof vest. He's being treated in the hospital. The president has spoken to that officer, and he's recovering and okay. The suspect was a guest at the hotel, the Washington Hilton. It's unclear if he assembled his gun inside his hotel room, if he had brought the gun to the hotel room. Police are actively investigating that right now. They're looking inside of the hotel room. They have not released his name. They're saying he's a man from California, and they're emphasizing this seems to be a lone wolf incident. They do not think at this point he had any accomplices, and it does not look like there are any more threats, at least not tonight, from what police have seen. Garrett Hake was inside the briefing room when the president spoke about the incident. And if I could also ask our director to roll the video when the president and the mentalist Oz Perlman, along with the First Lady, were speaking on stage when this whole thing happened. Garrett, tell our viewers exactly what the president says he saw, because he described that he thought it was a tray falling. What he probably heard was the gunfire before the Secret Service rushed in. This is the moment here, Garrett.
Yeah, the president said it all happened very fast. He wasn't really able to process it, Tom, much like the rest of us in the room, and that he thought what he heard was a waiter dropping a tray. There are thousands of people in that ballroom. It is quite noisy. It only became clear to him, as it did for, I think, many of the rest of us in the room, when Secret Service rushed the stage, covering him and the First Lady and taking them out, that this was a much more serious situation. It didn't register at the time that it was gunshots. That's consistent with, I think, the experience of most of the people in the room who heard a loud noise that couldn't be identified at the moment, and then the sort of rush from every angle of law enforcement into the ballroom.
Yeah, Garrett, we were in there. All of us were. I was seated next to the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Energy. We all hit the floor. The Secretary of State looking at his wife who was across the table, and at the president. I was trying to get him to come down as well, but he wanted to sort of get a gauge of the situation because it was so chaotic. And then we saw Secret Service jumping from table to table and just taking out each cabinet member to make sure they were safe. You had a chance to ask the president about sort of the temperature of the country right now. Over the last few years, he has seen 2 assassination attempts, maybe more than that. The White House has said the Iranians, there was a plot to kill him as well. We've also seen this happen with Democratic governors in Pennsylvania and other local officials in Minneapolis as well. It's been a dangerous time to be in politics in America.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I covered Capitol Hill before I came to the White House, where threats have skyrocketed in the years since January 6th. And so this culture of political violence has been kind of omnipresent. And I asked the president about that. And earlier in the evening, he had suggested that, he thinks he's a target because he's a president of such consequence. He compared himself to Abraham Lincoln and suggested that that's what happens when you do big things. I sort of pressed him on that idea. Is this the cost of doing business to be a politician in America right now? And he said yes, and not just in America, that he thinks this is a global issue of this political violence, but it's necessary, in his view, to be a person who does big things, and related it to his efforts to pursue his war in Iran right now. And so the president, who's been quite reflective on this, he said earlier in the evening that he has studied assassinations. He talked about percentages of presidents who've been targeted by assassins. And we know from other interviews that he's given that he has, since Butler, thought a lot about his own mortality. I think that was obvious in his remarks here tonight as well.
And as we report this out, we should tell our viewers, it stands to reason the target of this potential assassination attempt was the president, but we also cannot stress enough how many cabinet members were in there.
That's
there
right.
were so many important members of our government, of the American government, that were inside that ballroom, all seated very close together. And luckily, the Secret Service and D.C. law enforcement were able to act and stop this alleged gunman before he got anywhere near the ballroom. Julie Sirkin is outside the Washington Hilton. She's been reporting for us out on the street as both demonstrators started before this dinner, and then after the scenes that we've seen as the president left was rushed out to the White House. Julie, I understand there was another situation that unfolded in front of you.
Yeah, I've been standing out here along with my producer, Kyle Stewart, our cameraman. Again, Tom, just like you, still dressed from the dinner. We walked out here. They've barricaded this area. You can see police tape behind me. It's all around this area. The Hilton is to my right corner. But what just happened was, again, they're not letting people through. This is a residential neighborhood. There are hotels everywhere. Guests who are staying at the hotels couldn't even get access inside. A woman, I appear to be a woman, driving a car. She pulled up right here, right next to me, where you see the camera panning right now. Again, you see the police vehicles here. And I heard her being stopped by the officer, asked her who she is, and the woman appeared to say, I am the Minnesota councilwoman. I am the effing First Lady of the United States. And, put her foot on the pedal, hit gas, and just sped down this street. And then the cop had chased her. I don't know where that stands now, of course, but it just shows you that this is such an active and real situation still, even though the guests have left the ballroom, even though we are one of very few media left here. Things were starting to quiet out a little bit. They just held that press conference with the chief of police, Tom, that you were talking about and listening to, just feet from here. And yet this just happened. So it just shows you that this is still a security situation. They are still trying to figure out what's going on, and that there are still potentially people, even though you heard Janine Pirro say there was just one person involved, there could still be potentially people who they are monitoring out here.
Julie Surgan, you and your team, please stay safe out there as you continue to report this story out. This is still an ongoing situation. The investigation is just getting started in D.C. Gabe Gutierrez is covering this one for us from the White House as well. The president made a lot of remarks inside that briefing room, and one of the things he wanted to highlight was he is in court right now, battling to finish his ballroom, which is a massive ballroom. Underneath there will be a military bunker of sorts, which the courts have allowed to be built, but it's the ballroom above ground that has been very controversial and is now being challenged in the courts. And the president tonight pointing to this incident, saying we need a safer space to bring our leaders, to bring world leaders to come to Washington and to be able to protect them.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, the president arguing that $400 million ballroom will be funded by private donations, and that's why it needs to happen. Certainly, right now it's stuck in the courts, but he is making the argument that if he wants to hold large events at the White House, indoor events, that he does use this opportunity to argue for why that ballroom is necessary. The president, someone that likes to hold these large events with potentially world leaders or heads of state, and have many cabinet officials, and he used this opportunity in order to argue for that ballroom, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez first. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, we've been covering the breaking news that happened at the White House Correspondents Association dinner tonight, right here in the nation's capital. A gunman, you can see on the left hand of your screen, running past Secret Service, a checkpoint there, exchanging gunfire with the Secret Service, and ultimately being taken down. A Secret Service agent was shot in the process, being treated at the hospital. Luckily, he was wearing a vest. This is the suspect right now. We don't know his name just yet. We know he's from California. Police are describing him as a lone gunman for now. It is unclear exactly who his target was, but the president was in the ballroom. That concludes this NBC News special.
Say, Pete, right? They can make trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him. Because a lot of people would be looking and saying, it's like a weird feeling. And some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it could be trouble. And they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. What do I do? But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But say, Pete, right? They can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it could be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, And he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him. Because a lot of people would be looking and saying, it's like a weird feeling. And they would let him get through. But they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. And we really do. But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
We've just been listening to the president speak after shots were fired just outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner at the Washington Hilton in the nation's capital. The president saying a man who lives in California charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons before being taken down by the Secret Service. I'm going to ask our director to roll that video that has been released now by the White House. You can see how fast this man was coming. Look to the left side of your screen. He's sprinting right past Secret Service when they draw their weapons and begin to fire. The shooter was not able to breach the doors to the ballroom dinner. The president also sharing that a Secret Service agent was shot in the chest but was saved by a bulletproof vest. The president saying he heard a loud noise and thought it was the sound of a tray going down, and he was quickly rushed off the stage. The president also praising law enforcement for acting quickly and saying he hopes he will be able to share more on the shooter's motivations in the coming days. The White House also releasing a photo of the alleged shooter taken down by both Secret Service and D.C. law enforcement. This is a picture right now. One of the images they've released two different images of the shooter. It's still unclear, one, how he brought the weapon into the Washington Hilton, how he was able to bring that weapon into the hotel where the dinner was being hosted. Two, how he was able to at least run as fast as he was, running through at least one perimeter. But again, the president making it very clear he was very far from the entrance to the ballroom. Essentially saying that his life, the president's life, it was in danger, but not in danger in the sense that the man was so close he could start firing through the doors or at least into the ballroom. And again, we're still learning a lot as we get more information from the White House. At any minute, we're waiting for D.C. Police, the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, along with the D.C. Mayor Bowser, to host a news conference to give us some information. As soon as that starts, we're going to bring that to you live. Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House for us tonight, along with our team. Garrett was in there as well. Garrett Hake, who asked the president a question about essentially political violence in America right now. We've seen this happen at state houses. We've seen it happen across the country. 2 or more attempts on the president's life. And now what we saw tonight here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Gabe, the president also saying he started to study assassination attempts because of what's happened to him, and he's learned a lot from them. And also making the case for the ballroom that is now in the hands of a court, and the reason that it should be built because it can be protected better. The president questioning the security at the hotel, saying it was not very secure in the president's word. We went through security. We saw that there were metal detectors there, but it is a hotel. There are some policies the hotel has to follow with guests that are staying in the hotel that are not going to the dinner. It's not exactly a perfect place to host this in the sense that things like this can happen, and they did tonight.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, the president said, in his view, that this was not a particularly secure building, but he went out of his way repeatedly to praise the actions of the Secret Service and of law enforcement that were there on the scene. You mentioned the suspect. Yes, as we speak, according to the president, law enforcement is going through the suspect's apartment. He lives, according to the president, in California. The president saying that he believed that this was a lone wolf, but it's unclear if he had any political motivations here. The president did not seem to believe that this had anything to do with the ongoing war in Iran. But certainly, Tom, it was the president's initial reaction, what he said when he first heard some sounds. He said it was, he thought, some trays potentially being dropped. But as you were right there, just sitting